everyone. Today we have our another new episode, and we will discuss on social application for metaverse. We have our world famous speaker, Mr. Eric, and Professor David Smith. First, I would like to give chance, Mr. Eric.
Well, the one thing that when I look at the metaverse, I don't see that much difference between social and business because it's really all about connecting people, letting them work together to achieve common goals, whether that common goal is a good conversation or a thriving, online e-commerce business. It's really about having the tools to be able to achieve those things. What makes the metaverse really different is the ability to build on each other's work. So if Jason comes up and builds something I really like, then I can write something on top of that, and David can write something on top of that. He can tie in his networks. So it's really about, first of all, interoperability. I'm sure David can remember when it was exciting to be able to define data. Instead of mailing somebody a hard drive, they came up with this file transfer protocol on the internet. You could just give somebody an address and we could move files, and that was interesting. And then somebody said, well, why don't we share information? And they built the World Wide Web on top of that. Now we didn't have to give people addresses. In fact, they didn't have to know they were using file transfer protocol. We could just share information. And then it was like, well, why don't I share my applications? You can run my applications. And so as it keeps going, it's just what can we find easier and share. So it's really about finding people who have a common purpose and being able to share everything. So the ability to be able to share our applications and capabilities. Jason's on with us, and we both played in the Alien Worlds universe. And the key about that is the ability to take something a company has built and start writing your own thing on top of it without even a lot of times asking permission or doing anything. It's just, oh, well, okay, well, people are building these applications and contests and events, but probably the biggest thing is that people are just hanging out and just chatting, and somebody says, well, here's a good idea, let's do that. And it may have nothing to do with business at all. I know Jason does a lot of work with edible and sustainable gardens and things like that have nothing to do with, gee, how much money are we making from that? So I don't think that's different. So, there's two things that we can use when we talk about social applications. One is about connecting people easily and doing something we think is fun or important. Really building communities is the big skill set. They even have community managers now, of people whose job is just to connect people and make people feel more connected. And that's even gone to the phase where you could even say designers. So that's one of the new areas of design is how do you design experiences or communities? And the other thing is social causes. So people are coming together with DAOs to invest in social causes. A group got together to try and buy a copy of the U.S. Constitution that was there, and they didn't think somebody should have that and squirrel it away and own it. So they got together and tried to buy it. And so that's all. It wasn't because they thought this was a great business. It was just, we believe in that. There's some animal rescue. People have gone out and say, let's do it. There's people working to build cities together. So I think socially connecting is one aspect of this. The other is social impact or social causes. And it has the opportunity to change really how we think and interact socially because of the ability of the metaverse to come up with, quantify, basically package and share value. And that value does not have to be money. That value can be, opportunities. It can be fun. I'm working on a thing where we're seeing if just appreciation points make a difference in volunteers. So, is that money? No, it's just fun. So we're adding game game capabilities to the ability of nonprofit volunteers in the areas of art and the impact of art on. Right now, we're working with cancer support. So we've got artists and cancer support working to people, volunteers that are nonprofit, to just help cancer patients be artists and help art promote their cause and explain to people about their cause and tell that story. So again, social connections change the way that we like to connect as people, and social causes are two applications that can come. And it really comes from this idea of let's make things interoperable, like avatars and identities and value and the way we change and pay and reward and appreciate people. There's a lot of things like that. So I'll go ahead and interested to
Thank
hear
you,
what
Professor,
David has to say.
Professor David Smith.
Eric, I loved how you began to introduce this one in the pieces of what it contained, because you're seeing shifts beginning even faster as we go in this area. I was looking at a report last week from Gartner on this space, and they have forecast that by the year 2026, that almost 30% of the people globally will spend at least an hour a day in the metaverse. And you begin to see that it's really going to push up the value of it. Another firm predicted that by 2024, the market capabilities of the metaverse are going to be at $800 billion by then. So again, really beginning to see how it's going to happen and how the area is going to go. But let's remind ourselves that the metaverse is a 3D digital world where people work in a play, and it's blending the physical and virtual ways in virtual worlds in a way that feels really real and kind of permanent. And the metaverse, as you began to say, and let me just jump a bit further on, is regarded as the future internet for business, socialization, entertainment, education, in a fully connected, immersive, and engaging 3D virtual experience. It's really looking at a way to use concepts with users and avatars, with digital twins and others to interact with each other, and do it in a way where it really will work with our technologies. It does still have challenges as we see going forward. Data mining, databases, computer graphics, machine learning, and really going on further because of the regulatory environment, which is there. And we see it, but we know that as we look at the social applications of the metaverse, it's really beginning to say, how can we use it in ways that allow us to, in a more integrated manner than we see today on platforms like Facebook, LinkedIn, or there are many of the others. How do we begin to put it in a way that we can work together in a way that more closely mimics what we do in the real world and how we can work there? And can we look at ways in the social metaverse to do event triggered activities to help us understand ways to where we have cues in the real world? How can we set up cues in the metaverse to understand that when Jason smile turns up just a little bit at the ends, that he's really not smiling happily, but he's going, "What the heck are y'all doing?" Or that, just like that one. Or you see other places where you look at uh, NLP type cues, body language cues, and in the metaverse, will those body language cues be the same when we have an avatar giving them? And how can that work there? How can we, in a social application, the metaverse, understand that there will be multiple payment systems in the metaverse? How can we take those multiple payment systems and make them work seamlessly globally because the goal of the metaverse is to have an immersive social media that works globally. So, it's really combining the social media as we know it today, gaming, e-commerce, extended reality, which is both virtual reality and augmented reality. And how do we pull it together? How can we see that there's a heightened sense in the metaverse of us connecting with our social contacts and being there? Um, and and because we need to realize that even though we're in the metaverse and we're using avatars, we're using digital twins, we're still connecting with real people. And that connection to the real people may be geared more initially in the metaverse towards providing an immersive interaction experience to help simulate our senses rather than just talking to our friends, sharing materials with our friends that we do today. Um, and we're looking at the metaverse to begin to provide us senses that we don't have today in our 2D world on it. And that's where the augmented reality will come into play. And we see things like, for example, there's a company called X1, which is a Web 3D social media service that allows you to create and share the zones with your friends where you can set up very different spaces. Then you're going to see that the to interact with virtual stores, virtual other things is much different than what we have today. And yeah, I mean, we still really need to, as we look at social applications in the metaverse, really try to understand what would be safer in the metaverse than it is today. How can we put the pieces into it? How can we look at how to regulate, eliminate harmful behaviors such as cyberbullying, harassment, fake news, fraud, others like that. And we're still trying to clear that one and make it easier. On one hand, we're trying to do that, but the fact that it is a totally immersive environment might, for a short period of time, make it even more difficult. It may even magnify those threats as we're going forward. So that's really shares some of my initial thoughts on this, but it's going to be an exciting world, and with between 25 and 30% of global population being on it for over an hour a day, it's a trend that we've got to stay on top of.
Thank you, Mr. Jason.
I would agree. Stay on top of, if I'm interpreting that as deliver it correctly, do it right, build it well, right? Understand it thoroughly ahead of time. The march of progress outpaces the deliberations of ethics. It's always been maybe the most difficult problem of all is that the advancement of technology and the advancement of participants with their use of it really outpaces the discussion around exactly what's right and wrong about it all. In some cases, right? And so that is among the problems. I think Eric always does a good job sort of establishing some of the framework of what to talk about in the topic. And that one of the things I picked up on is that there are a lot of unresolved issues around it. So I think that I'd like to start with my first comment today by saying there is no the. Just as there is no the economy, there is no the metaverse. There is economy. It's a concept. There's also metaverse. It's a concept. The idea of there being the economy, it starts the visualization on sort of the wrong understanding. I think. And so where I was going with that is that organic competition is really precarious within the natural monopoly of network effect. because for there to be such thing as the metaverse or the economy, what that the refers to is the network effect of it. So that for those, maybe I should define network effect, right? It's the number of participants who have fully compatible operation connectability. Every existing participant's account is more valuable the more other participants there are, and that because of the exponential effect of growth of a network effect, there is sort of the one natural monopoly within which we're hoping that there still exists some natural competition. And that's sort of a precarious balance, just at the big umbrella stage of visualizing what is metaverse and economy as related concepts. But the last concept I'd like to introduce in my introduction first comment this morning is just about experiences, the value of experiences and the scarcity of them, and how to motivate affluent people. For example, like to motivate a person, you can motivate them economically with the correct payment reward, right? Everyone has some amount of payment reward that they'll spend their time and effort and focus trying to accomplish whatever's required, right? But how do you get an affluent person to like wait in line for 5 days? And the answer to that is it's those movie premiere experiences, kinds of events that have so much anticipation built up to the event and the experience of the event that people are extremely motivated to do that. So I think that Metaverse offers a way to proliferate the availability of experiences that would otherwise be impossible. And I don't know what to expect in that. Maybe it's similar to like the idea of if we're mining metals from comets and asteroids, like space mining, that the price on Earth of those things would be very low because there'd be such an abundance of them. The supply side logic would say like, well, then we can't even afford to go to space to get them because the economic logic won't hold up anymore. As soon as we bring it back, the price is just going to be like, well, you know, it's actually a problem. We don't have storage, and we don't have enough storage for that. It could be like that with experiences. Like there's an existing scarcity of experiences that people pay exorbitant prices to try to like get the Super Bowl ticket or something that the price goes through the roof to irrationality, to the zone of irrationality. And so there's value to deciphering that. It's something to maybe lament about, like the human condition that the market does that, but there's also something to appreciate in the value of experiences, and also to identify the value of gatherings specifically as experiences that people are very motivated to pursue one way or another. Anyways, perhaps more important to Eric's point was about the satisfaction that people have in their sense of life purpose, and that the undercurrent of motivation and why we're building anything at all.
Thank you, Mr. Eric.
So we can.
It froze.
I think he has internet issues. Professor David Smith.
Well, I was looking forward to Eric's comment there, the way he started. Now Eric, you're back. You want to start again?
Can you hear me?
We can
Yes.
now. You froze.
Yeah. So talking about the first idea is that of play. It's a natural thing we all like to do. We find things that we care about. Even some of the best scientists are just playing. like Feynman.
Again, I think Mr. Eric has internet problem. I'm sorry about that.
I think he does too. Let me jump in with some short points. Well, he's back, it looks like. You want to finish, Eric? You're having internet problems.
I'll try one more time. If not, I'll switch over to my iPad. But yeah, play is a thing that we all do. So I think the first social applications are things that enable play, people to connect because they like connecting. And with the metaverse, you connect from all different cross generations, cross cultures. That's the great thing about it. You can be who you want to be. If you can view people without judgment, that makes playing really fun. And one of the outcomes of play is the ability to want to create. Oh, here's this. And as you come together, so the next set of applications is really social applications, is really about how do you create together. So connecting and playing is one thing. Creating is a natural outpouring, a natural outcome of play. And if you can play effectively, then you go, this is really great. I'd like to share it. So then we should create sharing applications, making it easy for people to share these things they create. And some of that then turns into, a solid organization, which may be an organization that does something for free, but turns it into processes where lots of people can do it. Or it may be a nonprofit for changing, society, or it could turn into a business or businesses. So I think that is a natural, when we look at these applications, we need to think about playing, connecting with creating and sharing, and then scaling and turn it into standard process things that can be used, that actually become a real entity. So I look forward to hearing David's cut next.
Well, I love playing on the internet too. Unfortunately, I've gotten so busy, I can't do it as much as I'd like to. And I would love to actually see the metaverse expand even tighter into our physical virtual world. I'm going to be in Mexico over the weekend and the first of next week. And with my feet in the sand on the beach there, I would like to be both in the physical sand on the beach and in the virtual sand in the metaverse, and kind of see how I can blend those two experiences, and maybe even extend some of that tactical feeling back into my real world when I come back into Austin from being in Mexico, and let the metaverse extend my trip there that way. So, I mean, to me, those are some of the promises we see as we get tactical sensations, smell sensations, and even others into the metaverse as a way to enhance its ability to really interact with us. But that if you look at the social applications even broader than play, it's entertainment. We're seeing more and more entertainment brands set up social presence in the metaverse as a way to extend it. We've talked before about education and healthcare and work being in the metaverse, and each of those actually has a social application of them in the metaverse, from the healthcare side to how do I work with others to encourage healthy behavior. I was at a party Saturday night playing games with other couples, and we ate way too much king's cake, which is a carnival Mardi Gras type of cake that is nothing but sugar when you get down to it at the end of the day, and things. And I almost would have liked a social application marrying what I was doing in the real world, saying, David, if you eat that much, that's probably another 2 or 3 pounds of weight you're going to put on, where I'm trying to lose weight. And if you look at the metaverse as being able to blend the two, that is actually some of the scenarios I've seen, is being able to work with people to address even your personal challenges, be it a health challenge, be it a networking challenge, being it that you have special needs, that you have other ways to work, that the metaverse is a great way to become your surrogate for the challenges you have in the real world and be able to present you in such a way like that. One of the applications I saw in the social application, the metaverse, that just had me amazed was this gentleman who had lost both of his arms. And so he interacted with some of the early metaverse with voice controls. But in the metaverse, he was a fully functional, had two arms and doing things that he could not do in the real world. And, that was probably good for some of his mental health, if you look at it as a social application there. Uh, we also have talked some about metaverse in smart cities. Well, a smart city is going to be a heavily social center as you get there, because if you look at some of the technologies, um, like the Microsoft Mesh, which is one of them, and others, it's trying to see where you can bring in remote expertise, remote discussions. You see the in China university, the digital twins is where they're spending a lot of times trying to make that work within a social media environment. You're seeing some of the new entertainment, which is, for example, one called Alt Space VR, where it is trying to take the basic entertainment but turn it into a crowd function, a social media, where you, in a social mode with that, can change the outcome and directions of the virtual movie, of the virtual environment going, where you have the people in a social mode interacting to create new content and modify content and make decisions, unlike we can do in a movie today. So again, there's many different ways where you can begin to use this content, and we just need to really step back and understand that, like so many things, part of the technology is only limited by our imagination, and that we are at the early part of the growth stage of the metaverse, and we've only began to see applications added to it, and we've only began to see really user communities outside of the technical communities begin to coalesce in it. We have not seen a lot of the creative communities. We're seeing that now. We have not seen a lot of the intense web 3.0 communities get into, and we're seeing that now. So it's going to be, again, I'm going to go back to what I said before. We're on the early stages of growth of what's going to be a fairly significant technology path.
Thank you. Mr. Jason.
Well, there's a lot there. I don't know which part to build on, so I'll just start on the first thought that occurred to me, which is about the economic problem of successful medicine for the longevity of health, and so how people are retiring with a retirement plan, with the economy that has sort of created a retirement plan mathematically that will not hold up because they're living too long. That's a problem in the big average of things. One of the biggest problems in our economy, we don't know how to answer to it. It's like because it's a version of real success for people to have longer lives. Now, so in the past 2 years, in a disheartening sort of reality check, the pandemic and all other stresses combined, conflict and environmental, like emergencies, disasters, etc., have reduced the average lifespan, right, for the first time in a long time. And that isn't necessarily so. That what is available to medicine can indeed extend the average lifespan, right? The numbers are down in the past, this year and the past year before, for reasons of the conflict. And I think that there is actually some related aspect to this, and that the contentiousness around unsolved issues and the massive leap forward in the technological advancement posits a bit of a struggle that causes conflict, and it causes, well, there's medical authoritarianism and there's also medical freedom to consider. So where I want to go with this is with David Smith's comment about bridging metaverse with reality and augmented reality in the sense of like transhumanism, where people use technology like to put a chip in their physical body, or they will otherwise technologically modify their body. And that's a medical thing. And so, but it's also, it lends itself to metaverse concepts. And it lends itself to some regulatory concepts about where exactly society is going to be, or societies are differently from each other going to be comfortable with placing limitations on each other, not themselves. To say, like, I'm not comfortable with the way you're using that computer with your mind. Just like that. It's a bit much. If we get there. I mean, maybe. For example, I think it's worth it for the ethicists to try to get ahead of this one, because we know that as soon as it's available, it's going to rush out of the gates. And it's out of hand already before you even figure out what's right and wrong about it. So transhumanism actually is a very exciting prospect on its own, though it has an edge, I'm sure, somewhere conceptually to what people are comfortable with for themselves. If it gets treated as a medical authority thing, like you have to place a chip inside yourself, you can forget about it. I hope. But we don't know, right? There's a lot of pressure that I think that people are facing. So we should just be aware of what's out there, and that to bridge metaverse with reality is an exciting prospect, at least. To say the very least of it, for what's in it. Although there's a conceptual edge to it where I think that a reasonable mind would have problems with it. So to identify that and figure out solutions to mitigate it or reduce, place difficulty around the worst of it, at least. We're trying to map that out before it gets out of hand. Some things are already out of hand, and we don't even can't decide whether to put out the fire or strategize to prevent the future fire. Sorry if that sounds like complaining, because it's not. I wanted to get to Eric's point about how some of the pressure gets taken out of the scenario when the goal of the game is made clear and the outer bounds of the game is also made clear. It really does. The referee plays important roles for these sorts of things, and that the metaverse is about information, and good refereeing is also about information. So just try to connect some of those dots. I'm sorry if I'm taking up a bit much of my second statement here, and I'm flooding the table even further. There's a lot there.
Thank you. Mr. Eric.
So expanding on the idea that there can be an integration of the reality and the metaverse is an interesting idea. One of the things that's happened with web social media is going as we see a lot of mental health decrease quite a bit, and some people have at least gathered some data or at least some indication that it may be due to social media. So if that's true, the metaverse has the potential to make that a lot worse. Of course, it also has the potential to make that a lot better. It has the potential in being an immersive environment to help us overcome our fears, deal with concerns, get feedback about ourselves. And that doesn't all have to be human. I mean, the nice thing about the bots is if you can assure there's privacy. For example, one of the things people fear the most is speaking on stage in front of people. At some point, some surveys have said people are more afraid of speaking on stage than death. So I picked that because it's a big fear that a lot of us can deal with. And having had that experience where it's here, go on stage in front of thousands of people, it is pretty scary. But you can practice that. If you practice that on stage in front of a bots, that's pretty good. You can practice having, conversations with your boss. You can practice a lot of things, and for fun wise too, what's it like bungee jumping, or what's it like, I remember playing a game where you go up to the top of this building and, it's a virtual environment and you have to walk out on a plank and get donuts. It's scary. It's pretty terrifying to be on this little plank suspended way up. So, it's a good way of overcoming fears. So socially, there's things that you can do both with and without people that can actually connect people socially and help us overcome some of our biggest challenges. And then David mentioned the fact that, you can do things that maybe because of a disability you can't, but let's take that another level. None of us on this live stream have wings. Flying's pretty cool though. That wouldn't be a bad thing. I mean, not only can't we overcome disabilities, we can overcome things that we don't see as a disability, like the inability to fly. And flying in a virtual immersive environments is pretty fun. I mean, I've done that where you're on a platform that flaps wings and it's blowing air in your face, depending on how you're going. You're wearing your glasses, but you can turn and fly. That's pretty fun. So when we come up with this idea of connecting, we can connect for all kinds of things, and we can play. We can also create situations which can be very supportive and even healing. And then we can turn that into things that we can share with lots of other people. And that then maybe become part of standard parts of the metaverse. How do you deal with stress at work? How do you deal with relationships? How do you deal with but on top of that, how do we have fun? Let's all fly to the moon and have our live stream there. So the potential for integrating the real world with the current world is significant, and so is the non-real world with the let's have cool places to play. I know a group I was working with, we're just creating these underwater gardens because there are no pests underwater, right? So pesticides, and there's plenty of water from the condensation, and one of their dreams was to have an underwater bar. That would be fun. I would love to be connecting with everybody underwater. That would be very cool. So I think it's not only an opportunity for healing, but an opportunity, not only an opportunity for play, but it's an opportunity for healing also.
Thank you. Professor David Smith.
I would like to do the underwater one as well. So maybe we should just have a World Talent Economic Forum meeting underwater to have us network more together and extend our social connections that way. So I'm ready for that one.
Well, and I just went to the Oceanology conference this last week, and I'm sure plenty of people there would like to add their products and services and ideas to that while we were underwater.
But see, that Eric, that's a great example of some of the places where the metaverse can help us blend what we would love to do with what we can do in a virtual environment. I would still like to free parachute. And yes, if I was 15 years younger, 10 years younger, maybe, I would still go up and do it.
Flying suits would be really cool for all of us too.
Oh, I think it would be. And it's the same thing. I was talking with my fiance and about what we want to do when we get married, and I totally shocked her. I said, I want us to be the first couple to get married in space or on the surface of the moon. And she's going, well, I might FaceTime you when we do that. But on the other hand, if you think about, we could do it in the metaverse in a fully immersive virtual environment. And while I really want the experience of blasting off in a real rocket space and being weightless going there and stuff. And I can't be weightless in the metaverse yet, but I can sure simulate that. I can create a twin of us in the metaverse and do it in a real world, virtual world environment and still maybe do something like that, which as you can tell, I love being creative. I love being innovative, but yet I'm getting older. I just so you know, Eric, I have banned the word old in my network. No one's old, you're older. And the metaverse actually lets me to carry that interaction back even more, where I can in the metaverse, I can be the age I mentally think I am, as opposed to the age I am by calendar am. And again, as I'm talking about social application metaverse, this is some of the places where I would love to see it work and extend there. I love going and listening to live music, and I'm going and hearing bands and stuff at least 2 nights a week, if not more, and stuff. And I have such a diversity of things I go to. We go to the Austin technology forums. We go to conferences and things all the time, and being able to do that, it's part of where the metaverse can help us do that in a less geographically constrained environment. And I would love to see that. Some of the programs are being offered virtually now, but it's using Zoom. And I'm sorry, Zoom just is not exciting. But if I can begin to move that into the metaverse where I can have side discussions more with people, where I can actually go network and with them in a different manner like I do in the real world, I would love to see that move over into this and play it. Yeah, and I see places where we can do that. One of my favorite metaverse applications is I keep checking back in on what's called Metaverse Seoul, and this is in South Korea. And they have not only a virtual city hall in the metaverse, but they have now put all of their major tourist destinations into the metaverse. So I can go to the Seoul metaverse and travel through some of the tourist destinations in Seoul. And I don't feel comfortable traveling to Seoul right now with the world geopolitical environment. But on the other hand, I've played with that some, and it's actually not a bad experience. And you're going to see that more and more in real life. Barbados in the Caribbean now has a metaverse embassy, and they're doing the same thing. They are looking at how to work with it and how to move the tourists, because Barbados is a country that the majority of their gross national product is supported by the tourist industry. Great way to use the metaverse as a way to bring the social interactions in to get more people to come to Barbados, and how to do things like that. And Eric, I love gaming in the metaverse, but I like applications like this too, where I can do things that I normally would do in the real world more and do it through the metaverse. And I think that is going to be a really driver during it. I know in some of my social media feeds and Facebook today, I guess because Meta's data mining me way too much. I'm seeing all these new things in my Facebook feeds about international travel and about beaches and about all of this stuff. And so even the traditional social media is begin to understand the things that I'm wanting to do now. And if it was in the metaverse, I would love to click the link and to be taken there to see things in the 3D virtual world. I would even pull out my horribly heavy headsets and put it on to see it in an augmented virtual reality mode in 3D to be more immersive. And I can see that going. So, Eric, thank you for getting me started here with the things I'd like to do. But
Well,
that's the promise of metaverse.
we'd be happy to host your wedding either on one of the alien world's planets or in a station orbiting one of the alien world's planets. I think we've got a long way to go to get the tourist industry up, but I know several people are thinking that we could go on a grand tour between the planets.
What's funny, Eric, is I'm doing work with NASA today on stuff, and on a call on Friday with their Wicked Problem group, which I'm the lead consultant to, I actually floated the idea out of doing this, and they're going, "Wow, that's a great application. Let us brainstorm about that internally and see if we can make it happen."
Well,
So
I would love to renew my vows there, but I don't think I could get my wife to go with it, maybe virtually, but I would like to do. I'm like you. I would like to do that.
I would love to do it, but I don't know if I can get her up there either. But she's coming around. But
Thank you.
that is some of the things I think we'll see there. And when she actually heard part of my NASA call when I was discussing that with them, and she came back and said, "David, you're really serious that we can do this, aren't you?"
Guinness World Book of Records.
You can try to make it happen. The metaverse is the good surrogate if you can't do it in the real world. So, Dr. Sharif, I love putting some humor in here, but that really is the promise of what we're talking about is if I can't do it in the physical world in a social way, let me do it in the virtual world in the metaverse. And I think that's the future you are trying to queue up with this topic you chose today. So I probably should stop here and not get in much more trouble.
Thank you, Mr. Jason.
Yeah, like you never know if something gets interpreted as a promise or not. It's talking about plans for marriages is a good way to get in trouble if you're doing it in public, right? Keep that to your confidants. But you have to be willing to be bad at something long enough before you have a chance of being good at anything. And that Metaverse provides a training ground without it being really expensive or really dangerous either, which is excellent. That's an excellent thing. I mean, as much as people are concerned about aspects of the Metaverse, like the experience can be interrupted. If you're there because the motivation is for the experience of it, but then as what happened today, right as Eric was commenting, the connection froze. Things like that are bound to happen. There are bound to be like experiences that have momentum in them, but then froze, and who knows what to expect with that and how people will respond to it and how that problem gets solved or anything else, because solving that problem causes other different problems. So many of the problems that we have used to be solutions to former problems, I guess, as a way of looking at it. And that Metaverse is one of those things that I think that it's healthy to look at it as, it's healthiest to look at it as trying to solve problems and trying not to create new problems with them this time, or less of that. The discipline, the name of that discipline is appropriate technology, right? To make your evaluation with appropriate technology. And is it the right headset? I don't know. Are those electromagnetic waves actually safe at a prolonged exposure rate? Appropriate technology questions like that are I guess all over this as from a mental health aspect as well as from an economic gathering benefit, everything else. Yeah, sorry, that I wish that had a nice segue because that's just sort of a thought by itself. I'll just put that put aside for a second and start up a different thread in a different area about just back to the game, to the idea of the game theory, and us building this like it's a game and getting some of that enthusiasm happening to motivate people who don't necessarily need to do anything. They can do kind of what they want to do with their lives, and they're really capable people. And it's like there is real appetite for people to find something worth doing, the thing worth doing for whatever one chooses. They are sacrificing the opportunity cost of having any other choice, maybe even glorious nothing. And maybe a game is a frivolous way to look at it, but competition is its own motivating force for its own sake. There's something interesting about people just enjoying healthy competition. And I think I mentioned it in a previous episode about how we need competition to serve Metaverse, the concept. Despite the fact that there's a network effect, standardization should achieve that network effect. And that there should be meaningful options for people to join through various connections so there are fewer interruptions, right? Because if there's healthy competition, then there are many options for people to connect through, and then we'll have better experiences connecting because we'll have fewer interruptions. At the level of unhealthy competition, we can view games and people and the way they interact with games and systems like that to gain a more clear understanding of the competition that invites the return effect that people want to come back to. There's a big difference when a person enjoys the game or doesn't based on the nature of the competition, actually. Within like the domain of industrial competition, I think the stakes are too high. I think there's a role for the referees, so to speak, the metaphorical referees in this case, to say we need the right level of competition, we need the right type of competition, and we need it to be real competition. Because I think that we are lacking all three of those. Again, not to just complain, because like Metaverse is a thing where we can provide an example of a good solution while also providing clarity as to like where the solution fits and how. Maybe because what is productive need not be what's the word for it? Drudgery, right? There's an idea of work and productivity that we got to be willing to commit drudgery or something in order to succeed. I really don't think that's true. I really think that's the wrong idea. And it's sad. It's sad that austerity has pressurized so many people into drudgery in so many ways. And I can say that I am one, but not far from the worst of that. And that's a pressure we can deflate with Metaverse, maybe with the power of network effect within economy. Truly, there's a transformative effect that is possible through network effect alone. And the information that sort of allows us to begin productivity without drudgery is, I think, a big part of where we'll find the return effect of people wanting to come back and saying like, yes, that worked. There's I'm I'm not sure if you've experienced it when advancement sort of leaps, when you're sort of trying to break a stone with a hammer and it's going slow, but then you get the right angle and it starts going fast. That is a very exciting experience when that occurs. I feel as though that may happen within Metaverse. It may very well. I'm looking for it, and I'm hoping that it might not be my hammer that breaks that stone, but I'll be here chipping away at it. It's the best any of us can do. And I appreciate groups like this that ask very intelligent questions and offer, I think, very useful ways of visualizing and understanding. And I think good things to hope for too. So thank you for hosting. Thank you for joining.
Thank you. This is excellent discussion, and from these discussions, people can understand more about Metaverse. Thank you, Mr. Eric, Professor David Smith, and Mr. Jackson for your continuous support for World Talent Economy Forum. Thank you. Bye-bye and take care.